Diversity and inclusion. I warned you. Let me pull my microphone a little bit closer. I warned you. All of my diversity and inclusion teams, I warned you. I told you. What did I tell you? I said, listen, stay away from the basket weaving degrees. Stay away from the things that's actually not going to generate as much revenue as you think it is. Stay away from the thing that does not provide you the stability, or if you was to get laid off, we don't have to start depending on all of these groups in order to try to get you another job, baby girl. Diversity and inclusion teams. Let me tell you something. They are catching L's more than the masseuses. You know how Google laid off like 31 masseuses? The diversity and inclusion team is catching hell because the companies is realizing that they're not actually providing any real return on value. They're not really providing any return. They just in there whistleblowing, making people uncomfortable, being cultural nuisances, making people hate them, walking around in the Victim Olympics. But let me just tell you, the diversity and inclusion team, thank you, Tap In Productions. I will be reading. I'm going to read y'all super chats throughout the show. The diversity and inclusion team. I want to share with y'all a video in which they start to talk about exactly how black people are being affected by what's going on with the tech layoffs. Make sure y'all subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications. CNBC did a breakdown and they had a panel or they had a conversation with multiple different people in which they talked about specifically how the impact of layoffs is going to affect black people. Let's deep dive into it, ladies and gentlemen.
We're sitting here 3 years nearly after the murder of George Floyd, a time when many companies in response pledged over $50 billion to address diversity and racial equity issues. How is that going? What have the diversity pledges actually encouraged these companies to do? Shelley joins us now to talk a little bit about that.
Sharon, thank you for having me and for covering this.
We are seeing relatively low unemployment, but we're also seeing headline-grabbing numbers of some massive layoffs, particularly in tech, at some major tech companies, but other major companies as well. And I'm wondering how these layoffs are impacting black workers and are impacting the diversity, equity, inclusion efforts that some of these companies have put forth.
It is.
Before he gets into this, there is an abbreviated saying for diversity, equity, and inclusion. They call it the DEI. The DEI is the diversity. It's not die misspelled. It should be. But it's usually called DEI. And it's called diversity, equity, and inclusion teams. And usually what it means is we want to get more women in. We want to get people that doesn't really qualify for any particular job, but we want to be able to say that they're a part of the team. And so they create these mythical positions that don't necessarily mean anything. And then they do all of these stupid training modules that don't really add any value or to the bottom line of what the companies is talking about. And so a lot of these donations, what a lot of people don't understand, came from pacifying a lot of these different groups that did not have your best interests at heart anyway, such as Black Lives Matters. But let's continue.
Certainly a challenging period that we're entering. I mean, you're seeing the layoffs get announced, not only in tech, but you're seeing it across sectors. I am concerned that as we go into any sort of a downturn or softness, that some of the work around diversity, equity, inclusion, and certain populations will be hit disproportionately. And I'm worried because that's historically been what has materialized. The interesting thing about tech, for better or for worse, is it will certainly impact black workers. But one of the things that I've been most concerned about with respect to the job market and black Americans is we have been underrepresented in tech historically, which is not a good thing, but it may mean that in tech, maybe black Americans won't be hit disproportionately, TBD, but I think the underrepresentation there is the more important theme. And how do we ensure that in this down cycle that we are still thinking about ways to increase representation as we think about emerging from this thing on the other side?
I want me to tell y'all how y'all can increase representation? I got a very, very simple. Listen, we don't need a whole lot of conversations about it. We don't have to go on Clubhouse. We don't have to protest. Like, you can save all of that energy and actually put it into becoming successful, right? And the way that you do it, let me help you. I'm gonna really, really solve for this problem before we even have an issue at all. The way that you do it is A, you have to go and get a degree that actually matters. B, cut your hair. Listen, this is an uncomfortable conversation that I gotta have with y'all. It's an uncomfortable conversation. You gotta go and get a degree in an area that really matters. And let me say this also before I give you a tip on how it is that you can better represent yourself within these companies. Because I don't care. I'm gonna say what I really think. Just because you work for a tech company does not mean that you're a tech worker. Okay, let me say that one more time. Just because you're working for a tech company doesn't mean that you're a tech worker. On the flip side, one of the things that I push my bag chasers to do is also take into consideration companies outside of tech that you can then leverage what you know to get a position in these companies that are a traditional company. So, for example, I've largely leaned into banking. My bread and butter is user experience within the banking environment, which is why I know so much about how banks operate and where their profit margins come from and where they start to hire and how it is that they leverage certain resources in order to extract the most money from you specifically. It's the reason why I'm so heavy into mortgages, because I understand the value that they provide when you don't actually service the loan. Join the Bag Chasers. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. If you need a personal coaching call with me, email me at antondaniels413@gmail.com. I am an expert in what it is that I do. Okay? And I push my bag chasers to go into industries that's not necessarily the big name, because you can make way more money by leveraging a skill set in a traditional environment, right? So you can work at a bigger company. You can work at a bank. You can work at an automaker. You can work at a chip manufacturer. You can work at a company that does baby machines, or they sell grills or tables or refrigerators or Whirlpool or cabinet making company, and you can be a part of an innovative team within that sphere in which you built the culture around you. I've built my own teams at some of the places that I've worked at because they lean on me for the expertise of what it was that I was able to draw from being a tech worker. That is where the money is. They will pay you exponentially more to leave those companies in order to go into a traditional company. Now, I'm giving y'all too much sauce, so I'm getting away from that. Make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. The other side of it is you have to invest in yourself. The first thing you need to do is go into an industry that actually matters. Being a hospitality manager is the same thing as being an underwater basket weaver. Being a liberal arts major is the same thing as being an underwater basket weaver. Okay? An arts major. When you go into fields, STEM, for example, nursing, software engineering, data engineers, anything cybersecurity, when you go into things that the future is going to need, they're going to need more people in order to protect this space, this cyber, whatever it is, right? You will always, regardless, even if you go through a layoff, you will always have opportunities at your fingertips. So A, actually spend time doing the thing that may seem hard. That's not the path to least resistance when you go to college. You can go to community college. It's a whole nother way for you to be able to utilize that, right? The second thing is you need to cut your hair. Nobody wants to work with somebody that looked like they just came out of a Trick Daddy video. You fit the narrative. If you have golds in your mouth, you fit the narrative. I don't care about how you believe that somebody else's company that you didn't build is supposed to acquiesce over into what it is that you culturally believe you. Then go over to fucking Haiti. Go over to Nigeria. They all trying to come here. Go back to Africa and build up, or stay here and build up whatever company that you believe is supposed to make sense. Because if you could do it, then you would have did it, but you don't. And so you begging somebody else for a job to work at their company, and you're not going to change the culture. Cut your hair. Do your hair. Stop smelling like a piece of musty. Stop being musty every time you go to work talking about this is my natural scent. No, you smell like trash. You need to wash up. Please, for the sake of all of us, and for those of y'all that wear perfume, please don't overspray. Listen, I know you smell good. I know you washed up this morning, but good grief, do the whole office got to smell like perfume and they got to smell what you smell like? They got to smell what you smell like every single time you come in? You don't have to overspray. Everybody don't have to smell everything about you. It's a time and a place for that. I seen a guy, it was two guys, that one of them actually had on my Versace glasses, so you know they was from a different nationality, right? They walked by and they had the slick hair and he had all the cologne on at the Disney park. As soon as you walk past him, it's like, dog, what kind of cologne you got on that's that strong? You put the whole bottle on. The whole bottle, right? If you're actually a cultural fit, if you're a person that works hard, if you show up on time, if you do your job, if you stop embracing rap culture and bringing that crap into what it is that they got going on in the company, maybe you'll be successful when it comes to being better represented within these companies. Sorry for my rant, y'all. I just had to get it in. I'm going to read the super chat shortly.
On this great attrition comment, I think there's a couple of themes that I'd pick up. One is the frontline worker piece of it. We know that Black Americans disproportionately occupy frontline jobs. Many of these folks were the essential workers in the pandemic who, frankly, were out doing the hard work so that many of us could have the basic goods that we needed to get through the pandemic. But we also know that historically, there's been challenges with wages, with predictability of scheduling, and with benefits. And so you've seen very high attrition rates in many of these frontline jobs, particularly in retail. And what it ultimately means is the companies who can think about designing the frontline job, in a way that is truly reimagined, actually will outperform, because we know attrition has all sorts of direct and indirect costs. Those who have the courage to stay in the arena, commit to what I think is pretty hard to disagree with, which is inclusive growth is better for companies, better for society, better for our global economy and our domestic economy. I think folks that stick to that, I think will emerge on the other side stronger.
Shelley, what is the number one thing that many companies did after the murder of George Floyd in terms of making these pledges? What did they say they were going to do, and what is...
Now, why would the murder of George Floyd warrant a pledge for diversity and inclusion and more Black workers? Just curious, just asking a question. Why is the murder of George Floyd, right, and regardless of which side of the aisle you stand on and whether or not you agree with, the convictions or if he was murdered or not, it's not even a question that we asking ourselves right now. We talking money. How does George Floyd's demise factor into diversity and inclusion, equity, woke policies at the workplace? Just curious.
Has been done.
There's really two sides of the pledges that link to what happened with the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and many others. The first is companies made, in many cases, pretty ambitious pledges with respect to diversity in their own institutions. So they looked at the population across different levels, from entry level all the way through to the senior executives, and made commitments to, frankly, do better, particularly later in the funnel. So that's one piece of it. The second piece is what I'll call looking outside of the window of the company, which is how do we use our capital and our assets to help address broader systematic inequality? So how do we, in some ways, lift the floor, whereas some of the employment stuff often about raising the ceiling? Corporations have to take direct action in both of these things in terms of proactively managing their internal diversity funnel and understanding what representation looks like throughout, and having the right programs and
So basically, it has nothing to do with it. And I don't want to continue to beat a dead horse, because all this tells me is that we live in a privileged society where the overwhelming majority of people are lazy. They don't actually put the work in order to create the best environment for themselves. They feel entitled for America to do something for them, even though you directly never experienced any kind of racism or slavery. I don't care about your little anecdotal experience. I don't care about what it is that you're going to lie to me about and say, Anton, no, man, I experienced some level of slavery. You lied to me. You lied to me. You have not experienced any slavery. Nobody has ever made you do anything. And the only people that's actually really had any kind of impact on what's happening to you in society directly is the people that you live close to. And they probably look like you. They probably look like you. So we're going to have to do better. We're going to have to do better. We're going to have to make sure that we protect ourselves and we're proactive about how it is that we're operating in society. And if you don't like it, again, I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm here to help you get the bag. And the minute that you start coming to the conclusion that you need to do things differently, you'll have better results. Or you can sit here and complain about me, call me a coon, call me a sellout, and I'm going to be selling out while I'm on a first-class flight taking my daughter and my niece and my wife over to Disneyland, and then we going to head over to Paris probably in the next couple months. I'm going to go over to the Usher concert. I know me and Rita's supposed to go to the Usher concert in Vegas in April, and we're going to have a suite at the Vidara. You ain't never even stayed at the Vidara. Oh, I'm sorry. That's only for us coons and the white people. It's not for all of the rest of the people. So we're going to make sure that you don't come, and then you can sit there and complain about me while I'm helping all of the rest of the bag chasers get to the money. Make sure y'all subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, and do not join the diversity and inclusion teams.